Everyone dies the same way, you, me, anyone. Those who are alive, those who have already died, everyone dies the same way. Don't think you're all that good looking or whatever. Everyone is going to die the same way. For the same reason, it's a pathophysiological factor. And I'll explain to you why that's going to happen. So now here's the big challenge. How many types of situations do people die from? And for me to tell you that everyone dies the same way, I have to prove to you how that happens, and that's what I'm going to do in this video. If you're new here, if you're curious and don't even work in healthcare, go ahead and leave your like. Don't forget to hit the like button. Every now and then we make this kind of content that people enjoy to really understand how the body works, and in this case, how the body dies. All right? So, take the opportunity to leave a like and comment. Let's get started then. It's sad, but we have to talk about mortality, which means death, right? You're going to die, everyone will, whether you want to or not, whether you like it or not, one day you'll die, and it'll be the same for everyone. But when I say it'll be the same, I'm not saying everyone will die from the same disease or in the same situation. Oh, so everyone who died in an accident, no, the cause is individual, but the process of the body's death is the same. So, let's go. Regardless of the type of death, I'll first explain how a person dies internally, physiologically, and then we'll get into the rest. Any situation you can imagine, cancer, being run over, man, anything will end up here. So first, I'm going to do the opposite. I'll explain how someone dies first, and then I'll bring in the situations to match the two things. Instead of beating around the bush, I'm just going to give you the answer right away so you can understand. So guys, here's the thing. Our body is made up of cells, right? And these cells, a bunch of cells together, form an organ, whether it's the heart, lungs, liver, kidneys, several organs, and several other tissues as well. These cells are alive. If these cells are alive, then if they die, that organ loses its function. Let's give an example. If the liver stops working and the cells die, then we lose liver function. Just giving an example why. If the cells died, that organ stopped working, and the same goes for any other organ if the cells die. Now, for a cell to be alive, it needs energy, so here's the point. For a cell to be alive, it needs energy. And the energy that a cell needs. So, putting the biochemistry into plain terms, okay? The cell needs energy in the form of ATP, which is adenosine triphosphate, acquired through the citric acid cycle, the Krebs cycle, where glucose enters, and the mitochondria, which is an organelle inside this cell, generates the energy for this cell. From the moment this energy production decreases, the cell starts to be in jeopardy. Let's give an example. From the moment the fuel tank or the car's battery, right, when it's an electric car, starts to run low. The car might be new, but if it runs out of fuel or whatever powers it to move, it won't move. The car died, literally, right? Wow, so-and-so's car died. Why? Oh, the fuel ran out, it went bad, and it just stayed there. The car died, but it died because it ran out of fuel. The car died because it ran out of fuel. But it's not a bunch of cells, it's an engine that stopped working without fuel. If the cell stops working, it dies. And if it dies, it doesn't survive. In other words, that's it, it's dead, that's it. And of course, we have cells, especially in vital organs that are irreversible. If they die, that's it. And look, the thing is, it's different from a car, right? When we're here in this world, what leads to the energy for the cell to exist, right? To have energy, to have that. We have something called blood, and this blood carries the main things, which are oxygen and glucose. So blood carries a lot of things, obviously, right? But it carries oxygen and glucose, which are the main things. For this to happen here then, what happens is that from the moment a cell starts to have a reduction in glucose or a reduction in oxygen, or both, there will be low energy, and with low energy, this cell functions less effectively. This cell will try to make the body function with low energy and by generating respiration without oxygen, which is anaerobic respiration. And this respiration that it is generating there to try to keep the cell functioning so that the cell doesn't stop working is what the mitochondrion is responsible for doing. It will generate acidity, lactic acid, it will release harmful substances and cause acidemia, depending on the pH value, of course. So here we have a reduction in the body's functioning, right? Because the body doesn't work or operate well in very acidic environments. That's why our blood pH is around 7.4. So any value below 7 already starts to be incompatible with the cellular functioning of our body. That being said, what happens then? Let's understand now. If a cell dies due to lack of energy, maybe it's not just one cell that died, it's several cells from that organ, from those organs that died. So, depending on the type of organ, we have a big problem. Let's give an example. When a person has a heart attack, what is a heart attack, for example? The coronary artery was blocked and that region was left without a blood supply, so it was left without oxygen and glucose, so there was a lack of energy, and that cluster of cells in that region died. And if it was the left ventricle, it stopped contracting, the heart stopped working. The guy had a cardiac arrest, for example, as a result of a massive heart attack, for instance. So, that person died because there was a lack of energy. That cluster of cells stopped working, but that cluster of cells was very important because it was what pumped blood throughout the body. It stopped pumping blood throughout the body, so all the cells in the entire body died. So a patient who had that massive heart attack, so it was possible to explain. Now, a guy who had a car accident and the guy is hemorrhaging, what is he losing? If he loses more than 50% of his blood volume, it will be unsustainable for the rest of the body to receive oxygen and glucose. So this person died as a result of a lack of energy due to a large-scale hemorrhage. So any accident you've ever thought of in your life where the person had hemorrhage, they also died from a lack of energy. Nursing practice, but and an airplane, for example, where people have already died before the impact, how did those people die? In the same way, an airplane is pressurized, right? Now, if the airplane is pressurized and it's, I don't know, above 10,000 feet, I don't know how many thousand feet the airplane will be flying at, how many meters anyway. But when it goes down, if it drops very quickly, we won't be able to have that difference in altitude. It will really affect the nervous system. We might have neurological decline, and if I have neurological decline, I have a depression of the respiratory drive, which is the pneumotaxic center. That way I won't breathe, so if I don't breathe, I don't have oxygen, I run out of energy, and I die. Cellular, so the person can die. A plane can lose pressurization, for example. That's why the masks drop, but if those masks drop and there's no oxygen, people would die. Also due to reduced oxygen, because you're in a place with thin air, there isn't much oxygen or not enough. For you to have the minimum amount of oxygen, sufficient PaO2, otherwise you would have a problem. So for example, in a plane, even if it doesn't crash, a person could die before the impact. For several reasons, and most of those reasons would be more neurological. Because of this drop that's going to happen there, the person neurologically might stop breathing because of that. So before the impact even happens, the people probably died. That's one situation. Now, with the impact, I don't even need to say, right? Because all the cells suffered the impact. Whiplash effect, a lot of problems happened inside. The person died instantly. High-speed accidents, for example, where the person died, we have the whiplash effect, where organs get torn inside. So all of this will make the blood not circulate the way it should, and we'll have a drop in energy, death there, like a person who has cancer, depending on the type of cancer, but the person it's being undermined by some cells with uncontrolled growth, and that's harming its function. So, if a cell has its function, now there's a cell next to it that has been contaminated. Guys, the order of functioning, actually it's making that organ malfunction, and then that organ starts to have problems. Depending on the cancer type, it spreads through the blood and can quickly be fatal. For example, aggressive cancers can cause death in just a few days. Why? If I have an organ there that produces a hormone, insulin, which is vital, but that's not the only thing it produces, right? It has other hormones, it has other enzymes that it releases there. So, that organ there will become unviable, especially regarding insulin, which is the part that will most harm this patient there. And not to mention other things. So, in other words, why is the person going to die? Because the cancer is invading cells, and these cells will compromise the organ, and the organ will compromise other organs. And all of this will cause what? A decrease in function and will compromise the vital organs that are responsible for this. From here, it would be the heart, lungs, and nervous system, right? This triad works together so we can have oxygen and glucose. It's like a blow to the head that gives me a neurological disorder. So I can have a reduction in this respiratory drive and lose this right here. You get it? In other words, the person is having respiratory arrest, so that's another situation. The stroke is hemorrhagic in the same way, right? If there's an increase in intracranial pressure in the patient's head, there's no brain perfusion. I'm going to lose the nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, and the respiratory drive, so this patient will die from the stroke. Obviously, yes, but what's really causing everything to die there is this issue with oxygen, right? So if you start to analyze different situations, a patient during surgery, what's the risk of this patient dying? I don't know, maybe a hemorrhage that he could have in there. The surgery was really complex and could cause a significant hemorrhage, right? That could lead the guy to that. So if we analyze all types of deaths and think about the cause, and if we go a little deeper into the pathophysiology, we'll get here. So, when I say that everyone is going to die the same way, the same at this point, in other words, everything leads to a reduction in oxygen and glucose, most of the time, it's oxygen. Okay, if you stop to think about it, guys, oxygen is the key player. Without oxygen, nothing exists. Everything basically ends, speaking about the human body. So that's why oxygen is, let's say, a priority. In the emergency room, in an intensive care unit, in an operating room, a patient who is having surgery, this part of controlling the patient's blood gases is very important, the hemodynamic part as well, but the hemodynamic part also affects the gases, especially oxygen. So if we look at the whole context, right, thinking broadly, like I asked you to do here, that's exactly it. So if we stop for a moment and think, everyone declines in the same way. Now what leads to that is variable, each person has their own way. But in the end, why did the guy die? Was it a drop in oxygen or in glucose as well, or just oxygen? Unfortunately or fortunately, that's how I understand what the causes of death would be there. Not the cause itself, but how we die. Now, the cause itself has variables, okay? It could be a heart attack, being run over, a severely burned patient, impact, someone who got burned, right? A severely burned patient, drowning, man, like anything you can think of, we can get to that point. So, did you find that interesting? Do you want more content like this? Do you want something deeper about this so we can try to see how it is? We can save more people because with this we encourage deeper thinking so we can save more people. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed it, but that's what happens.